Hello, Camilla, and welcome to the podcast. It's great to have a colleague here on the podcast for the first time. And yeah, today we're going to talk about how we as Vlinder are calculating the amount of carbon that we're sequestering, that we're sucking out of the air in our projects. And it's just really fantastic to have you here. I know you've been working on this firsthand. But first, can you actually just say a couple of words about yourself and how you got to work on this project and how we're calculating this? And then we can jump in and talk a bit more about the carbon calculations that we're doing.
Yeah, thanks, Martin, for having me. Yeah, about the carbon curve, it's like a big thing I've been working on for a while. So most of the questions you will ask, I hope I can answer. From my background, I studied Limnology, which is close to biology. So I'm coming from the environmental side, but for me, it's super important to also get like, what are the calculations behind it and how does it work and how is sequestration working anyhow? Yeah, and I got kind of to Vlinder because I wanted to make a bigger impact in the world somehow. And I think it's the perfect spot where I am right now to do that. Yeah, this is maybe just a few sentences about me.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks for really taking that on. Like, you know, I'm hearing it's important for you to be a contribution to the world, and you're like actively seeking how you can do that in your life. So really, yeah, thank you. Just amazing. And you know, we're colleagues. Really great to work with you and have you on the team. Let's have a look at how we're actually, from the more scientific side, are calculating like how much carbon are we sequestering in our projects.
Yeah, then let's jump right in. I will share my screen. You have to allow me that.
All right. Okay. Let's allow you that. Try now.
So, because I guess does it work?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, then let's just jump right in. So we are having, so the calculations I'm doing here is for a canyon project. It's a reforestation project only with mangroves, so it's blue carbon. And just for the beginning, if you want to calculate the carbon curve and if you want to do it like properly, that it can be used for Vera, which is the big standard, you have to choose a methodology. Methodology is from Vera most of the time, and they are like all the calculations in there, how you have to do it, that it kind of has a proof that we are doing that properly. So like the most steps are given, and some of the steps you have to choose or find out or figure out how you can do it, how you can measure things and how you can calculate it. And I thought we start with like the overall calculation we are doing, what's the carbon stock in our project, so the change in the carbon stock in our project. And there we have 4 components where we have a look on it in a mangrove project, which is the tree biomass, the shrub biomass, the deadwood, the carbon stock in deadwood, and the soil, the change in carbon stock in soil. And for our project, the 2 components we will focus on is the tree biomass and the soil, so the carbon stock change in soil, because the other 2, we don't really have shrubs in our area and we don't have really deadwood in our area. So these 2 are the main components I would like to explain to see what is the change in these 2.
All right. Okay, great. So just for the listeners, we're looking at a formula right now. And Camilla, this is the formula that will give us the output of how much carbon we're sequestering. So that's the ultimate question, right?
Yeah.
And this formula is given by Vera. Exactly.
Okay. There are some 3 steps, which I skipped now, I have to admit, because I think it would be a bit too much. But this is like, this is the main important part for us. Yes.
Perfect. Okay. And to calculate that, how much carbon we're sequestering in a project, we're looking at 4 different things you were saying, right? Like the tree biomass, the shrub biomass, the dead wood, and the soil carbon, or the carbon sequestered in the soil. And we're looking at only 2 of those for this particular project. For other projects, you may look at all the 4 or other ones. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for summing that up.
Okay, got it. Clear. Thank you. And is this the same form? So this is the universal formula that's the same for all projects. And in some projects, biomass is going to be, tree biomass is going to be more important. In others, dead wood is going to be more important.
Yeah,
is that right?
your shrubs will change too, exactly.
Okay.
I think soil is also quite important for mangroves, especially. In other forests, there the content is not that high in the change. So this is also a mangrove thing that you can look at. Well.
All right, perfect. Very clear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, so I guess we start with the first big component. What's the change in the carbon stock in the tree biomass? And for that, I will now switch to an Excel sheet to explain it, but I think it's not necessary to see it. So the first step was to choose the species we want to plant. In our case, we chose 3 different species, which are native and local, and we know we have seedlings there. The availability of seedlings was given, and yeah, so we decided to take these 3. And now we wanted to know what's the biomass of each species. So what we need is the DBH for a species. I have a species here, which is Avicennia marina. So I will show that maybe as one example of this one species. The DBH is the diameter per breast height.
Can you, Camilla, can you zoom a little bit more in here so it's a bit easier to see? If you can just, perfect.
Like this, maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, my screen is bigger.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so what I wanted to say, the DBH is like one of the main parameters measured because it's easy to measure, and it's also possible to get the biomass out of this one parameter. So the first step was to find how the DBH is changing over the time, over the next 20 years, because we want to calculate our carbon curve for the next 20 years. Because out of this parameter, we can then calculate the biomass. And this was actually quite a tough part because it was not easy to find these values. How will it change over time? But we managed, we kind of modeled it with the literature we found on, because it's also important to get like local data, because of course trees are growing differently in any area. Yeah, and this is the growth curve. So it's like the change of the DBH in the next 20 years. And out of that, we were calculating the biomass. There we have the above ground biomass and the below ground biomass. And these 2, there we had some formulas. And these formulas, they are called allometric equations. You can actually see those 2 here. They look quite complex, but it's just a formula. And this was found from literature. So there were some papers for each species where somebody was like cutting down the trees and getting the real biomass out of it. So we could estimate the biomass. Yeah, and this is how we got like what will be the estimated biomass of one tree from one species in our area. Yeah.
That's good. So we don't need to cut all of them down.
Yeah, we don't need to cut any of them down. This is pretty one of the big good things if you estimate it just.
Yeah. What about the DBH, the diameter at breast height? Those numbers, we were planting 3 different types of mangroves in this project in Kenya, and these numbers that you got here, is that then specific for each species of mangrove?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's specific for each species and also as local as possible. So we had some data from Kenya and some data from Tanzania.
Right. Okay. So scientific papers that's saying, okay, there was somebody who went and took some measures over years of mangroves in those regions, and this is how they saw them develop over time, and then they published a paper around that, and we're using their numbers to estimate how our tree will develop year over year. Yeah.
That would be the ideal idea, that you get one paper where somebody explains it this way. This was in our case not possible, but we found a few papers with a few diameter and age means, and then we modeled it with a growth modeling curve.
Okay.
So
yeah,
this was
perfect.
also one step.
So when kind of assessing this, what's important is try to get as relevant data as possible from, of course, the right species, as well as also from the region, and then you can kind of start to extrapolate. If you have a couple of measures over years, you can start to extrapolate out the development of the diameter of the tree year over year, and then you use that here. So you could find probably similar data, I suppose, for other types of trees if you were modeling for other types of projects.
Exactly. Yeah. And as accurate as you can get, the better it is, of course.
Yeah.
Because then the estimations are more precise.
Got it. So, and then you were saying there's above ground AGB, above ground. What is the B?
Above ground biomass.
Above ground biomass and below ground biomass. And that formula, that's universal for any trees, or is that also specific to these to this species?
This is also specific for the species and also for the location. So these two are from Tanzania, for example.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
So as specific as possible is like the goal for everything.
Yeah.
There are also overall allometric equations, which are for some species are quite good because they give a good precise output, but it really depends.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So then we get the biomass of these three different species, and now we wanted to combine them. Yeah. So next step would be, we have the biomass of one tree. Now we want to know what's our area where we will plant. So what are the hectares we have and how many trees will be on this area? And for that, I divided kind of our areas into replanted and restored, because maybe I can show that here. I hope that's okay that I show some pictures here too, but I guess for the video it would be nice to see that.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so for the listeners, what we're looking at a little satellite image over the area that we are going to be replanting and restoring the mangroves in Kenya. And I think Camilla's going to provide a little bit more explanation here. Let's see.
Yeah, this is just an example of our areas, and what I wanted to show is that there is a difference on how many trees are still left in the area. So we have some parts where there's bare land, where there's nothing left, kind of, and then we have some other parts where there are still some trees left. And of course, this will change the amount of trees we are planting, because on the bare lands we will plant about 3,500 trees per hectare, and in the other areas we actually cannot tell because we don't know. We didn't count each tree, but we did like an estimation, again an estimation on like 2,000 trees per hectare. So it will be something between 1,500 to 2,500 trees we will be planting. There is also like a picture on how this looks like. Yeah, it's bare land, there is nothing left, and then in the other areas there are just a few trees. Yeah, but we will still be planting there.
Yeah, so here what we are looking at, we're looking at a couple of pictures of from the site where we can see exactly like how does it look like for us to get an idea of how many number of trees that we could plant on the restoring areas and the okay.
This is another example. Yeah, this is just briefly, and Nice pictures to show. Yeah, so this is like the big difference on the density, how many trees will be planted. Yeah, so we have the biomass of one tree. We know how many trees we want to plant. We have the area we want to plant, which is in our case 35 hectares for planting and 14 hectares for restoring. Then we have a conservative mortality rate. So we just want to be sure that this is also in the calculations, even if it's not that high. We now say that we will have 5% mortality in the first 2 years, and then a conservative 3% every year. Just
and yeah, where did we get this mortality rate from?
Experience, actually. This is what we discussed a lot with the people in Kenya. They told us we will have a 90% survival chance, which is really, really super high. And I think it would be amazing if we can reach that. So this is where the 5% come from, actually, and then like additional 3% every year to be sure that there's not more we're losing.
Okay, so this is 5% at year, 90% at year 20. That's what they've seen in the past, is it?
90% overall.
Overall, okay, yeah. So what we're saying actually here, I don't know if you've done that calculation, but probably we're left with, I could imagine, I don't know, maybe like 60% left of what we originally planted. So we're like, this is a very conservative estimate.
Yeah, it's super conservative. But in this case, I'm always on the conservative part, because if the estimations are lower, I guess it's better than too high.
Yeah.
Of course, precise would be good, but yeah, let's see. I'm really looking forward already how it will be when we start planting, how it will change over time, and then to compare it to the estimations. Yeah, so how to continue? Yeah, so we have the biomass then. So like the overall biomass, all trees in all areas on all hectares with all densities. We have it here for the planted, for the restored, and then here the final overall tons of biomass in all planted areas. Yeah, and now we finally get to the carbon. There is a carbon fraction of tree biomass, which is 0.47, so it's kind of the half. This also comes from literature. It's, yeah, a lot of people made an analysis in the lab to figure out how much carbon is in biomass. And this is pretty sure that it's about the half.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So and the biomass you said you got to, what you're, if I'm understanding you correctly, what we're saying is the initial calculation we did before, that was how much biomass a single tree sequesters year over year. And then now what we're doing is we're multiplying that by the number of trees we're going to plant on the number of hectares that we have available. And then we're deducting the trees that we say that will die year over year. And then we multiply all of the, or we add all of those together, and that's the final biomass that we have for the entire area of the project, with the different species, with whether we're restoring or replanting, including mortality and all that. Is that the math? Yeah. Okay, got it.
I think you just started with sequestration. This was really just the biomass, so there was nothing about carbon so far.
Okay, yeah, got it. Okay, yeah. So that's yeah. There's a difference between the biomass and the amount of carbon that is sequestered.
Exactly, and it's the half. This is like what where the carbon fraction comes in. So we have the overall biomass, which are like in the first year would be 65 tons biomass of trees. Mm-hmm. Overall, summed it up. And if we take half of it, the carbon fraction, then we have our carbon stock. So what is sequestered in this year?
All right. Yeah.
It's the, sorry, I have to continue here. Yeah, it will be the change of carbon stock in trees.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So you were saying this number, the carbon fraction, that's the percentage of carbon per weight of biomass in the tree.
Yeah.
And is that the same for mangroves and all other trees, or is that also a unique number for mangroves?
I think it's a bit different. It's quite similar. It's most of the time it's 50%, but it's similar.
Okay, yeah. What we're seeing here is 47%. Just for the listeners, we're seeing 47%. Yeah. That's the carbon fraction for mangrove trees.
And this is also given by Vera. I think there's also quite a similar amount, if I'm not taking that wrong. I think it's similar what Vera is suggesting. Yeah, there have been so many analysis and people who were like getting the carbon fraction. So this is quite a sure number, I would say, a global one, at least for carbon. Yeah, and then we actually look at the change over time. So how is the carbon changing over time? And then we have what the biomass gives us on carbon sequestration. So this is like the big first topic. Yeah, and then there is the second big topic, which is the soil. Do you have any questions on the tree biomass still? Otherwise, I would continue now with the soil.
Yeah, so let's see. So in the beginning, what we said is that what we want to calculate is the amount of carbon that we sequester from the project. And here we were saying that there's 4 different elements that goes into this. But for us in our project with the mangroves here in Kenya, we are only looking at 2 of them. And one is the biomass in the trees, and the other one is the soil carbon. So now we calculated the carbon sequestered from the biomass in the trees, and now we're going to look at the soil carbon, and then we add those 2 together, and that will give us the final curve. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Yeah. And for the soil, this is actually more difficult to estimate because there is not so much research done so far. So I tried to figure out a rate of change in the soil stocks. So how much does the carbon content change over time per hectare? This is actually always given per hectare because it's hard to tell if it's just 1 tree doing the work or if it's like 10. And right now we have this rate, which is 1.75, which was found in literature again. There I'm really looking forward to see what's the real amount of change during time. And we also decided to add some soil measurements in our program in Kenya. So we will do like annual measurements to really see what's the change to get then the real amount of soil change. Because right now this estimation it's okay. And I think it's still conservative too again, because it's not as high as some other projects use the value. But yeah, it just gives us an estimation. Okay. And then we take this rate and multiply it by the hectares we have every year.
All right. And are you then looking at or comparing to alternative or other projects? Like you went online and you found other comparable projects, and you look at what rate of change in the soil carbon have they used, and then based on that we came up with this is the number we chose to estimate with.
Yeah, I took it from literature, so like not from other projects. There were a few projects which had it quite lower because Vera is suggesting a lower value. But there was, for example, another one in Myanmar where they used like 5 times higher than ours. And they had some research done by a university, which was close to the project area. So I think they really got super precise values. So I'm looking forward that our value will be higher too. So maybe like 5 or 6 times.
Yeah.
Could be.
That would be amazing. And how, I don't know if you know this, but I'm curious, like, how do we actually measure soil carbon? This is a little bit of a rabbit hole like knowledge.
Yeah, you take soil out of the area. It looks like a long pipe, and you put it in the ground, take it out, bring it to the lab, and then there is like cooking recipe how to measure the carbon.
All
So
right.
it's
Cooking
like lab
carbon.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's not so hard. I mean, I can explain that one day in more detail if you're really interested in, yes. But I've never done it on my own, but I would love to see how it is done.
All right. Yeah. I know you're going to Kenya also to check it out yourself and really like to kind of validate all your calculations and really get your hands on the project. So yeah, maybe you'll get the chance and we can make a little video from Kenya when you're cooking up carbon.
Yeah, that would be cool. I hope I can go to the lab too. Actually, I didn't ask that yet. I know I will be involved in the field work, which is also a big thing, I would say, or I'm really super excited about it. But maybe I can join the lab too.
That would be fun.
Then I make a video.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, getting back to the carbon curve. So we have the soil, we have the biomass of the tree, which are the two components in our project. So we have no deadwood, we have no shrubs, and then we get to an annual carbon stock change. The word change is important, of course, so we cannot take like the carbon content of the biomass overall. So we have to look how it is changing over time every year. Yeah, and this is actually the final thing, this annual carbon stock change. There we have a mean. So this is per hectare now again to see what's the change for 1 hectare. And yeah, you can also see a graph here how it is changing over time. These are the years, and this is the carbon content in tons.
All right. And so for the listeners, what we're seeing here is we're seeing a curve of the amount of carbon that the project sequesters year over year. And the curve that we have here, that's going, it's a bit like a little hill. It's going up and then it's going down in the end. And so I'm just kind of curious, like, why is it actually going down in the end?
Because the growth is getting slower of the trees.
Mm-hmm.
So they grow really fast, and then we have a lot of carbon sequestered, and then it's getting slower and slower. That's why it's getting down. I mean, there is still carbon sequestration when it's going down. It's just less.
All right. Okay.
So there is a peak at the age of 15 where they're like superheroes in sequestration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then it's getting less.
And is it so this is, I suppose this is something we can expect from any type of forest or any type of trees, that at some point they reach maturity and the amount of growth in biomass starts to stagnate, and it will not grow much bigger than that. Okay. And
yeah, this is the same in every forest. It's just a matter of time. This is different.
Okay.
Mangroves are quite fast. They grow fast, and then and then they stay like that. Yeah.
And one of the other things we were looking at also here in the calculation was the mortality rate. Is that also calculated into this curve here?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're also, so actually that's another reason why it's dropping as well, is that we're actually, we have more trees later, and there will be 3% of trees dying every year in our estimate here. So it's actually more trees. Well, I suppose not a higher number of trees, but a higher amount of biomass that's dying every year. So I suppose that's another parameter that kind of have the curve bend down towards the end.
Yeah, totally true. Because if you have the mortality and additional that the growth is slower, this combination also decreases the curve, kind of.
All right. Okay. Yeah, that's clear.
Yeah, and then I just have it here on this Excel file a bit differently, because this is now not per hectare, but it's like the overall for the whole area of the, I don't know if I said that we have 125 hectares right now. So these calculations are all for the 125 hectares.
Mm-hmm.
And this curve is also for this area. So it looks actually similar. It's just another amount of tons because it's not per hectare, but for like the overall area.
Yeah. Perfect. Wow, this has been amazing, Camilla. Thank you so much for explaining this. This was very clear, really, really helpful. Is there anything that you think that the listener should know, if you're somebody looking to develop a carbon project, or if you're a company looking to offset your carbon and questioning projects and wanting to know more, like, is there anything any piece of advice that you would give?
Start planting.
I like that. Yeah. Like, really just let's get in action. Like, that's it.
This is all, it's all about planting. I mean, of course, it's good to have the estimations and everything around it, but I think the goal must be to plant trees.
Yeah. That's a great advice. I love that. Camilla, thank you so much for taking the time. And looking forward to have you back on the podcast in the future where we're going to be cooking up some carbon.
Yeah, it would be great.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Martin, for having me. It was nice being here. Great.
You too. All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.